First off, I'd like to say to everybody, it's a great pleasure for them to welcome me into their space. So it's a privilege to be here, and I'm more than happy to speak with everybody. And I will just speak about what I know, nothing more, nothing less. I will just give you my understanding. Well, I mean, it's a big question. Everybody wants to know what's happening in the world right now, because there's been so many markers. People talked about the end of the millennium. People talked about 2012. There's a huge expectancy inside people, and I think that's fueling a lot of the feelings right now. And it probably sounds like a cliche that we're having a kind of evolutionary transition. But the thing is, like, because humanity always tries to put it into dates and tries to frame it, but actually these moments are huge. So it takes a long time to move through these moments. It's not just, flicking a light switch and you move from one stage to the next. It's a kind of gradual transition. What works for me is that it's not so much the fact we're moving through a transition. Everybody can agree with that. The question is, what's our awareness of it? What's our perception of it? Because everything is a question of perception. If you have perception and awareness, you understand what's happening, because it's going to happen anyway. What I feel right now is like we've always had a consensus reality for a long, long time, and people are similar in their agreement. We can agree on things, and there's a kind of similar space, but that's not happening anymore. That stopped. I think the consensus reality now has broken. And that's why it's so uncomfortable, because before we could share the same space with people, and we may not agree with them. We may have a different football team we support. We may have different opinions about what we like or what we dislike, but there's a general agreement. But now it's as if you could be standing next to your family member or your best friend, but you feel like you're in a different reality. The disjuncture has become much greater. And I think that's a sign that we're getting to a kind of threshold. I don't know how you say threshold in Brazil, but there's a threshold now that we're moving through, which is very, very important, because this reality kind of split has come to a very kind of high level. That's why probably now, if we're speaking with, a family member or a close friend, and they'll say, "Oh, you're crazy. I've known you for 30 years, and what you're saying is crazy," because now there is that great difference between people's perceptions. So I think it's important, really. Now I'd like to talk about perceptions. So I was thinking, how could I explain perceptions? And I had an idea only tonight that I would bring a friend along to introduce you to. Voila. Yeah. This friend of mine, I haven't touched for 25 years, and that's the truth. I bought it 25 years ago, and you haven't touched it, but I brought it out to show you this evening. Okay. Now, for example, this is the majority of people in the world today. This person believes in what the mainstream news tells them. They believe in everything the government tells them, and they've lived believing everything most of their lives, and it's gotten them to where they are today. And it's very hard to be anything other than this person, because you've invested all your belief systems, your time, your lifestyles, and it's very hard to be anything else but what this person represents. But then sometimes a trigger or a catalyst comes along that actually breaks this person. Maybe it's an event globally, it's an event personally, it's whatever, but something comes along and it starts to break this person. So when this person breaks, this happens. Another person comes out. And this person starts to have different perceptions. This person starts to realize that, in fact, everything they thought they knew about the world was wrong. There's something else going on that they didn't know about before. And they start to realize that there's a bigger picture going on. their everyday life seems the same pains, the same joys, the same chores, the same work, but they realize that there's something else going on in the world. And they start to realize that actually there's the world is like a chessboard, and there's global players moving things around, moving events around, controlling economies, controlling the flows of the world. There's other players in the world that are not on the mainstream news, but they are playing with people in the world. This person gets quite angry, frustrated. All the initial emotions are frustrating. They want to rebel against the world. They want to fight the system. They're angry for the lies. They don't know what to do. And this person is feeling like that. And then they start to have the urge to seek deeper. And they want to know what else is going on. Because once you open one, you start to open the other. So what happens is that you have another break. And then you get to another little person. And this person starts to realize that, in fact, behind the global players, there are people you've never heard of, secret families, secret organizations and groups, people who are never in the world spotlight, they're never known, and they are behind all the global players, and life gets a lot more mysterious. But then a lot of people stop here, because that's a lot of information. When you know the world is not how you thought it was, and your whole world is turned upside down, to get to this little person takes a lot of personal effort, and a lot of times you want to stay here. But then sometimes there's something else inside of you that says, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. And if you persist with that feeling, with that inner knowing, then you start to break. Then you get this little person. And this little person comes to realize that, in fact, behind all the events of the world and all the people and all the secret societies, there are forces, evolutionary forces, cosmic forces, something non-physical, non-tangible, but very, very real going on.
Intangíveis, mas muito reais.
Sim, intangible, but very...
So, Alana, shall we stay here?
No.
Well, can we go any further? Well, and then if a person is really persistent and really wants to find who they are, then you even have to crack that. And, oh, yes, it cracks. And this, my friends, is you, the essential. And this is what has contact with the source, the energy, the vitality of life and everything. And no one can take that away from you, because that doesn't break. Sorry, that's solid. There's no one can take that away from you, because that is the essence of everything. And this is the difficulty when you get asked the question, what's going on in the world? Because you can't really answer the question until you know what level of perception are you dealing with. So we're all this, everyone is this, but of course, we're inside of this, a layer of conditioning, inside another layer of conditioning, inside another layer of conditioning, inside another layer of conditioning, and then we're back to my friend, the average person, the normal person in the world. So we can talk about, and we probably will, we can talk about global events, we can talk about events happening in the world, we can talk about the conspiracies, we can talk about the health issues, the biopower, we can talk all about that in different levels. But I hope that the intention is and the aim is to finally come back to the essential person. So that's the answer to your question, Alana. Where shall we begin?
Rock on. I loved your explanation. and the way you talked about this, because it really is so hard to approach someone with that conversation, you know, because you actually don't understand in what layer the person is speaking. So it was a perfect explanation. Well, where to start?
Could I just say also that these are not criticisms. You can't criticize a person for being at a certain level, because that's how the world works. People must choose if they want to take off the conditioning. If they don't, let them be. This is not a judgment thing. It's acknowledgement.
Okay, well, KD, I'm very interested in knowing more about the story of your relationship with the unified field, right? How did you start a friendship with that lady that you said that you wrote 2 books already about this relationship, that, let's say, from you with this lady, right? And you say you said she doesn't channel the unified source field, because channeling is a wrong, like a not a perfect word for it. And so I wanted you to tell the story of this relationship with her, and how did you find out that she was channeling the unified source field?
Well, AT, in answering that question, maybe I'm going to do a Ricardondo Rondo, a kind of indirect way to get to the question. You should know, you wrote a book about that.
Recalculando a rota.
That's it, yeah. Before we talk about the unified field, I would probably like to explain how my view of consciousness is, because unless we understand, unless there's agreement on that, the unified field may seem a bit weirder than it already is. Now, all our sciences and the standard view of consciousness is that the brain produces it. Like the complexity of the brain produces the phenomenon of consciousness. So matter is first, consciousness is secondary. Okay. I don't want to get too complicated. I don't want to get into the theories of consciousness, but I will say, imagine if you went into a tribal area that had never seen technology before, and you showed them a television and you switched it on. Maybe their first thought would be the programs are produced inside the television. But we know that it's common sense to us. We know that the television receives consciousness. So it receives the broadcast, okay? And when I was a young kid, 10 years ago, we had small black and white televisions. And then we moved to a normal color television. Then over the years, we had high definition. Now we have whatever, plasma TV, I don't know what we have, but you see, the picture's the same, whether it's black and white or whether it's color, but what's important is the capacity of the receiving instrument. So my understanding, and I can't prove this and I don't wish to prove it, but my understanding from my experience is that human beings receive consciousness because the whole cosmos is a unified consciousness field. And we receive the picture according to our capacity of our body and mind, brain to receive it. Do we receive a black and white picture, or a basic color picture, or a plasma TV picture? I mean, for example, if we thought that consciousness was produced in the brain, why is it that people have experience of life after near-death experiences or life beyond the body? So it's obvious that through all these experiences that have been catalogued for hundreds of years, there's life beyond the body, because the body is a receiver, not a producer. But the problem is that the consciousness field is trying to get into the little person inside of here, but there's 4 or 5 or more conditioning levels outside of it, which is blocking the program, blocking the broadcast. So it's like we're in a kind of perception. So I'll now answer directly Alana's question. When I met this lady, she was not interested in mysticism, science, or anything. She is a mother of 4 children, and she's what we would say innocent. She's not interested in things of the world, but she's been receiving this information all her life. And I feel the reason she receives it is because she has no blockages and no conditioning film. So my sense is that everybody can receive this. It's not a special gift. It's not something that we have to particularly train ourselves for. We have to unblock ourselves because the world deliberately puts a kind of electromagnetic fence around us with distractions, with noise, and and all this, which is taking away our home resonance. And if we can unblock that, then we receive what is naturally all flowing through the cosmos. It's not something mystical. It's not something that we should be running around trying to make a spiritual revolution about. It's all about just coming back to what your state is, to always have this contact with the whole cosmos. But if we're honest with ourselves, I think everyone here can say that in some way they've had that experience. Maybe it's been a kind of instinct or a gut feeling or something in your stomach or intuition or a nudge. These things are signs that we are receiving information, but because we're blocked, it has to come through another way. So all I do in my small work and when chatting with Alana is for me, the focus is to try to get all of us to release our conditioning so we can just find our natural selves and our natural relation with the world. It's nothing more than that. We just need to take off our masks, our layers, and find that natural balance. Unfortunately, the world is constructed to make it very difficult for people because the powers in the world don't want people to find their natural inheritance. And that for me is the real conspiracy. Yes, there are many, many other conspiracies, as we know, financial, biological, digital, political. But the major conspiracy for me is when they try to block humanity's natural evolutionary development. And you've all been very patient to listen to me this far.
Right. So what would you say are the main messages of the unified field through the person you have? I mean, is it speaking through you and her or through her and you're translating?
Like I said, I feel we're all receiving and in different ways. I'm sure that in the work I do, I have instinct and inspiration. But when I work with this lady, I luckily have the ability to ask direct questions through her and get direct answers rather than just trusting one's intuition. And so that's why I've been doing this direct work with her. And the main message is that, and the messages are called the way back home. People have to get out of their own way because they're blocking themselves, mostly through their own. And for example, the messages they say is that there's a lot of spiritual teachings in the world, and they always say you have to go higher, high and high. You have to go to reach something. And what what the unified field says is you don't have to go anywhere because you're already there. You just have to take off all the conditioning and realize that you have everything that you already need. You're already there. One of the questions I did ask is that, well, aren't we just, if I'm asking you questions, aren't we just having a conversation with ourselves? And they replied, yes, of course we are, because there's no distinction between you and I. We are the same aspect, the same existence. I mean, there is no separation. It's just one existence. It's only different states. There's an energetic state and there's a physical state. So, for example, if we have an iceberg, the top of the iceberg is out the water, we can say that's the physical point of place, the physical manifestation, like a human being. Below the water, there's much more of the iceberg, but then the iceberg is connected to the sea. And the iceberg and the sea is exactly the same thing. It's water. It's just that they're in different states. One is liquid, one is solid. So it's like humanity. Materiality is the same aspect of the unified field, but they're in different states. And so the problem with the world is that it wants all the focus to go on the top of the iceberg, and everyone's looking at that piece of ice and have debates around it. Does it melt? Shall we have a war to try and make it melt? Should we join icebergs together? But they're not talking about the water that connects everybody. So you see, the distraction is on the wrong thing. And we can have a revolution about icebergs, but are we ever going to find the truth? And since all reality is just a variation of different states, then we have different dimensions in the same space, but a different vibrationary state. And going back to Alana's first question about why the big transition in the world, often when you go through cosmic cycles, you get to a point where cosmic change is coming, and that makes the reality state quite unstable. And that's when you can have crossover of different dimensions. And that's when you get a kind of wobble and a kind of breakdown in the reality consensus, which I feel is happening now. I'll stop there and pass it back to you, eh?
Okay, someone asked here, and I think it's a genuine question everyone has. What, in your opinion, motivates the controllers to do that to humanity? What is the reason? Why keep us in slavery? Enslaved.
So we can't open our water bottles. That's a important question, a very good question, and deserves to be obviously responded to. My understanding, and it's an important question because this is the critical element of what's going on right now, in my understanding. What I feel is that everything exists in cycles. This is how the cosmos works. And there are ends of cycles, just as there are beginnings of cycles. We see that in human life. We see that in nature. As above, so below. The cosmos works through patterns and cycles. And it seems we're coming to the end of a cycle now. And it's important because at each end of a cycle, there's more of a push for evolutionary development. And my sense is that there's an energetic push now for the evolutionary development of humanity. And in order to have control, you have to make the other side unaware of the control system. Otherwise, then you have the rebellion. Just as there are evolutionary forces, there are also forces that are de-evolutionary. Because again, these polarities exist in all evolution because it's friction. You cannot have evolution without friction. For example, if your car wheel didn't have friction on the road, it wouldn't be able to move. Friction is what causes movement. So you have evolutionary forces and you have contesting forces or friction forces. So whilst there's evolutionary forces on the planet and in the solar system, there's also human forces. And they want to control the planet because they want to manage it for very selfish, egotistical reasons. But they realize that if humanity has more awareness, if they start to come into this evolutionary development, then their perception, their development will accelerate very quickly, and they won't accept any more control structures on this planet. It seems that these power groups on the planet, they know what's coming. I mean, they're not stupid. They've known these cycles for a long time. So that it seems as if they're getting quite desperate because they're rushing to try to get control measures in place to block human awareness for when the kind of energies come in or the changes start to happen. And they can't stop what's coming. You can't stop the sun from shining. You can't stop the planet from revolving. But what they can do is to block off people's ability to receive. They dumb you down or switch the television off so you can't receive the broadcast. And this is what's happening now with, for example, the health issues, the programming, mind controlled issues. They're trying to block people. So when these evolutionary changes happen, people won't receive it and won't react or respond to the evolutionary change. So the question is, are these power groups in contact with non-physical forces, non-human forces, because they want to gain more power? Probably, but that's not going to change the issue of what we're dealing with. So it's not easy for people to grasp or understand what's a really, really big picture. So I try to bring always back to you and deal with what each person can deal with. Mm-hmm.
What can we do? How can we better become a better antenna?
I think it's simpler than we realize, but we overcomplicate it. What we need to do is not get entangled in what the world is throwing at. Like, imagine being at school in the school playground and there's a bully. If the bully wants to bully you and push you around, you have to be on their playground. If you're not on their playground, they can't reach you. If you walk off to another playground, you're out of their vision, their scope. So they can't get to you. What they try and do is to create distractions so you come into their playground. What we have to do is move to a different. So if you look at what's going on, look at what they're targeting. The health issue targets the fear of death. Everyone has the fear of death. So they're worried because they want to protect their health. So they bring you into this fear of the body. And then now, of course, they're talking about the supply chains creating food shortages and people potentially having starvation, especially in Europe, and what's going on very strongly now. Because if people think they're going to starve, it brings them down to the lowest level. Everything they're targeting right now is to bring the person down to their lowest level of survival, primitive, animalistic responsive. That's what they're trying to do. Everything they're targeting is to try to get you out of your sovereign self and into a dependent, needy person who then you outsource your dependency onto somebody else, the government or to other people to help you. They want you to lose your faith, your trust, your ability to be an independent, sovereign person. So yes, there are going to be difficulties. It is going to be uncomfortable. People are going to find life more difficult. The cost of living may go up. It is going up. You may have financial issues, work issues. But the question is, we have to accept that in these transition times, life gets discomfort. It's uncomfortable. But the question is not to get entangled in that energy, because that then takes away your ability to separate and find harmony in yourself. Simple test is to go and have a lunch or a beer with a person who's really entangled with the narratives, who's preoccupied, frustrated, or worried. Spend some time with them, and then you notice your energy level drops. And then compare that with being here with friends in Oasis, and you realize, boom, it's completely a different vibratory space. So, the way to combat this, to answer Alana's question, is you choose where and with who you want to resonate. And that for me is the principal thing. It's not rocket science. There's no equation to it. It's you make a choice, what information you want to receive. You are the receiver of the broadcast. Do you want to receive the main narrative, or are you going to tune into a different broadcast? Do that, and by doing that, you slip into a different space, and then you start from there. Hey.
Right on. Well, a lot of people are commenting on because we're living in different layers, like you said, in different consciousness layers, it's hard not to get entangled, for example, with people that actually share life with us, right? I mean, sometimes in your relationship, sometimes your parents, I often see my mom and I, like you said, we share the same reality, but we live in completely different worlds nowadays, you know? And so how, because, okay, I can manage not to get entangled with the controllers, with the energy, but it's so hard not to get entangled with the ones that are right by me in our own families. So how can we manage the relationships through this process?
Sure. You know, we don't live in caves. We're a social people. We have these environments. We all have that situation. Even, you know, and I have it the same as you. You know, when my mum asks me, "Oh, things are bad in the world, aren't they?" And I say, "Yes, they're not so good, but don't worry about it. We'll get through." You know, I don't start answering about, "Well, you should get down to this level of perception, this level," because, you know, it's not for that conversation. So we have to realize that we're going to be around people who are always going to be on different levels. But you know, our job isn't to try to persuade them to change. We're here to be aware of them, to engage with them, but we have to maintain your state through awareness. You know, you don't forget the relationship. You don't, you know, but you have to realize that observe the other person's state. Can you speak with them? If they ask you, yes. Otherwise, you may want to leave it on a social conversation. I try to, when I'm with people, I try to speak to them or behave with them according to what I feel is their level of perception. And often, yeah, in my mind, I'm thinking, how far down the rabbit hole would this person really want to go? You know, is it beneficial to them? You know, if I see signs on there like asking me, I'll open up. If they don't, I leave it. You know, not everybody wants to go down the rabbit hole because everyone has their own pace, their own rhythm. You know, not everybody here is here in this lifetime to find the little person. Some people are here to be, you know, this person. So you have to understand that and observe it and choose, you know, how you wish to engage with them. But speaking for myself, I have a kind of personal kind of rule. I always try not to leave a person in a worse state than when I first met them. If anything, the opposite. You know, I try to keep them in a balanced stage. You know, if someone is frustrated, you know, someone wants to fight the system, I try to bring them down to a balanced state because that is the natural state of the universe, is equilibrium. If you can bring someone down into equilibrium, then you're helping just a little bit.
That's
That's
what you
just
do
my,
with me, huh? The days I'm pissed off.
yeah. I just say,
Okay, faz
hey,
comigo nos
hey,
dias que eu tô
yeah,
indignada.
yeah, yeah. Exactamente.
So I see that a lot of it comes to us trusting ourselves, right? Trusting our instincts, trusting these messages that come along to us, trusting our own intuition. But we were always taught not to trust, right? We were always taught to be small. We were always taught to not question anything. We've been through years and years of conditioning of like not believing in ourselves. So what would you say is something we can all do in order to kind of like notice what is a genuine voice, a genuine instruction that we should follow, or I don't know, conditioning voice or our ego speaking? How can we differentiate, like make know the difference from all of these voices that talk within us? Which one is the source talking through?
That that's a good question, and you know that's why the most governments want to get the children into school at youngest age possible, at 5 years old, because they want to try to program you into external trusting of information rather than the internal trusting. It starts at a very young age. this conditioning. So it comes down to taste, internal taste. So, for example, if someone said to you, describe to me the taste of a mango. I love Brazilian mangoes. Now, if someone said, describe a taste, you have the taste in your mouth and you say, it's juicy. It's sweet. Okay. Everybody who's tasted it knows what it tastes like. But if you're talking to someone who's never had a mango before, how can you describe it? So really, how to trust that instinct is by taste, because it's like a valve that starts to open. If you trust, you see, if you block your intuition, okay, then your intuition will come back and you block it and you block it. And over time, those intuitions will stop coming because you've trained your body to block them out. So that's, that's the contrary behavior. But if you listen to your voice or intuition and you follow it and you have a sense of it, if you follow it, then you're opening the valve and you're opening the kind of way, and more intuitions are going to come. And then you say, oh, follow another one and follow another one. You see, you attract this energetically, just as you attract resonance. If you start to listen and follow your intuition, you'll attract more, and then you get used to the taste of them, and you know when it's genuine and when it's. That's usually, he's a musician. When he gets an inspiration for a song, you would feel the taste that this is something that's going to make a good song. It's something true from you. And, and if you listen to that more, it comes more, all creativity works through that. And every person can be an artist, don't have to play guitar. It just seems that, you see, Life A, and everyone knows, Life tries to, how to say it, Life tries to tell you that you have to look for concrete solutions, You have to find something physical, or you have to, you have to find a solution. That's what all kind of the world works by. There may not be concrete solutions, but it's about walking a path. It's not about finding a concrete end solution. I don't have any solutions, not for you, not for me. If you want solutions, buy an IKEA furniture with instructions of how to build it. That's a solution. But what we're dealing with is recognition and awareness, and just coming back to tools, elementos. We're dealing with elementos de humano.
Sí.
I don't have to translate that.
What do you mean, elementos humanos? What do you mean?
Elementos, human tools.
Ferramentas in Portuguese. Ferramentas. Yeah, and then sooner or later you're talking to ETs and stuff, like Lorena here.
Yeah, well, who knows that, everything is in communication with everything. Life is in communication with itself. But you would not want to start a communication with someone who is not open to your communication. You wouldn't start a conversation with an ant, because the ant isn't going to communicate with you. So if there are other intelligent species out there, understanding that humanity is wanting to have a conversation, they're more likely to try to find you.
You're doing
a very good job, Aidan.
Yeah.
Thanks.
George, he channels music in our meetings. He sings the song as it's coming at the exact moment. That's
true live music, no? Directo. But you see, it's very difficult to use that language with a lot of people. If you say that, they'll think you're a bit strange. But in fact, it's the most natural thing in the world. Just that most people are closed off to that understanding. But we're getting there. More people are getting there. We should not be embarrassed to have these conversations. We should speak our truth.
Mm-hmm. So KD, Dani made a very important question here. She says, is there a force that is opposite to the controllers in the same intensity and with the same level of power?
Yes and no. I would say, yes, there is a force opposite to the controllers, Are they the same in power? No, they're greater in power. Because the true evolutionary forces, that's a natural flow, okay? Like the waves. It's a natural flow. That has natural force. What the controllers are doing is trying to push back against the natural force. Imagine trying to hold back a tsunami or hold back a giant wave. It takes a lot more pressure. And you can't let go. You can't lose your attention for a moment because it will come through. So you see, one is a natural power, one is an artificial resistant power, and that's never going to be strong as a natural universal force. That's why there's so much going on at the moment, because these contrary forces, or let's call them unnatural forces, are really desperate now to play their hand, to play their cards, because they know what's coming is much greater, and that's why there's so much distraction, uncertainty, chaos, because they want to get everybody else in the disorder, the energy of disorder. So therefore, you're not aligned with the natural flow of energy. I mean, there's an old myth, it's an English myth about a king. I can't remember, like in the over 1,000 years ago. He thought he was so powerful that he thought he could stand on the beach and hold back the tide. He drowned eventually. So my sensation is that there's going to be a lot of, like I said, a lot of discomfort in the coming years, but eventually there will be a drowning at the end point.
What in your point of view is the importance of oasis and places like that throughout these moments?
I like to use the metaphor of blotting paper, but Alana, do you know what blotting paper is? Is it known there?
No, I don't know what it is.
Aidan, you know blotting paper?
The American doesn't know either, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. You have a, let's say, a piece of paper, okay, and you put a drop of the paper's, let's say, white, and you put a drop of colored ink on the here, and a piece of colored ink here, a drop of colored ink here, a drop here. In the beginning, you have white paper with a few colored dots on, yeah? But actually, over time, those ink dots start to spread across the paper. Okay, and you don't notice it. It just seems like there's more color coming. But at some point, you have a tipping point, and then boom, the whole paper changes to a different color. That's what I feel Oasis and other groups are like, is that you're creating a vibrational resonance, a hub. And at the beginning, you may think, oh, we're alone, you know, we're just on one little piece of color. But there's all these dots of color around the world. And eventually, the vibration's going to go out, and it's going to help to flip the whole playing field. So what we can do something for ourselves, and it's good and true that we should do something for ourselves. It's not selfish, it's doing something for our like-minded friends. And we can also do something for the bigger picture. For ourselves, we can come together, have friendship, have connection, have energy. But whatever you do in a group, that always resonates out. Just like throwing a pebble in a pond, ripples go out. Nothing is in a vacuum. Any energy you make goes out. So you can do it for yourself, and you can do it for others. But yeah, nothing is in a vacuum. So if you are feeling good between yourselves, you're creating something, you're having that connection, that will go out. You won't see it, like you won't see the waves going out physically, but we live in a frequency dimension. Everything has an effect. But importantly is that you must feel good, because you are the source of any energy that comes from you. So it's good to feel good about feeling good. I mean, this week is Easter week. I just have to mention it. And having lived in Spain for 12 years, I remember the Easter parades. And in every parade, there are people walking bare feet, and they're whipping themselves, you know, for their sins. We don't have sins where we can be wonderful people. should not treat ourselves for our sins. We should treat ourselves for our good.
Ah, that's so nice. So you think we should worry less about what's actually going on and just focus on creating a new parallel reality, or where we can, I don't know, manage to create another culture that happens for now within that culture, but kind of like trying to, would you say, split from it, or like be a part of it, but just kind of like a hub, like you said? Because sometimes I get tangled, and lots of us in Oasis, worrying about the actual facts, right? What's happening in China and all the crazy things that are happening and stuff. Should we become like unaware of all of this, pretty much like everything that's going on, and just focus on our own resonance and vibration, or kind of like a mix of the two?
I feel it's important to be aware. Awareness is primary, and to observe. Should we be concerned? In some way, it's okay to be concerned because the world's not in a good state. But you see, what's happening in China and Russia and elsewhere is going to happen anyway, because these are pieces of the chessboard that are part of a game plan that has to play out. Whether you're concerned of it or not is going to play out. But I would say to be aware and to have a general concern is not the same as to be panicking or worrying, because immediately you're dropping down into the fear and the base level which the world wants you to be at. So, for example, I watch some news, I watch alternative news, I watch some mainstream news, only to see what the narrative is. But I watch very minimal, and I don't engage with it. I just observe it.
So-
Can you translate it?
Yeah, she would like to know if truth is a frequency or a field, if it is indeed connected, if she is in connection with her own truth and connecting with her higher self, if that is something that's recognized in the larger universe.
Yes, it is, definitely so. Because there's reality, which we are experiencing now, and there's what we can call a higher reality, which operates beyond, obviously, beyond this reality. And that's where the permanent truth is. In this reality, we have smaller truth or relative truth or human truth. That's why it's important to find your own truth. There's elements from the high reality or the unified field always intervening in this reality, always trying to find a connection to come in. And if a person can connect to their truth, a genuine truth, that makes a connection outside of this lesser reality to the high reality. And that's important. You're connecting this world to the higher universal world. And your genuine truth can be that bridge.
Falando com ele, pode abrir o microfone, gente. And so I'll speak up for everyone, and thank you so much for coming and for being awake late night. And I think it would be truly amazing if you could participate with us more, and go further down the rabbit hole in some meetings, and sometimes just speak about the source and the unified field and all of this. I think you have so much to bring out to us still. So thank you very, very much. We love you, and we want to hear more.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Aidan, for your wonderful translation and focus. I appreciate that. I've only just now saw the comments, because when I was concentrating, I wasn't looking at the comments. So I'm looking at them now, and I really do appreciate it, because there's no point talking if nobody's listening. You see, you need a listener to make the whole. And so you've made me whole by listening, and thank you.